let me get your attention up here and show me which one you want to do the most. Not everyone has a hand raised, but okay, I need to count. If you're a 1, raise your hand. That's majority, so 1. So we need to find the 6 trig functions for this. 1, we have a negative angle, so we need to think, where is negative 3 pi over 4 really? Because positive 3 pi over 4 would be here. So where is negative 3 pi over 4? In the third quadrant. So in the third quadrant, what's positive? They're both, what's both? What is both? Sine and cosine are both negative. So tangent is positive, cotangent is positive, everything else negative. Okay. What is the tangent at negative 3 pi over 4 or 5 pi over 4? Negative 1, positive 1, because it's in the third quadrant. So cotangent would also be 1. What is the sine at negative 3 pi over 4? Negative root 2 over 2. Same thing for cosine. Now what would cosecant be? It would just be root 2. So secant would also be negative root 2. So 1, 1, negative root 2 over 2, negative root 2 over 2, negative root 2, and negative root 2. Should be your answers for that one. Questions on this one? I forgot to stop first grade this. But moving forward, so after this is your last one for this one. Moving forward, your shark bites are now going to function more on your trig stuff so that you don't lose that information, especially if you are a junior moving into your next math class. You'll need that information. So you'll see more trig stuff than anything else. Unrelated, because I also forgot to mention this in first. If you're interested in computer game design or programming, there's a course that GMU is offering that's around the room, so take a picture of it if you are interested in that. Left off here, we went over those 6. Yes, no, I don't remember. Yes, okay. So those were the examples with sine and its inverse, cosine and its inverse, tangent and its inverse. Seeing where they really canceled and where they didn't. And now we're going to do some that really don't cancel, or they'll be completely different functions. So remember, in order to see do they cancel or do they not, either the angle or the exact value inside needs to match or be within the inverse domain or range. Just so we remember what those are. So the inverse range for sine is negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. Why did I have to write it this way? Cosine is 0 to pi. Tangent is negative pi over 2 to pi over 2, but not included. These are the ranges. And then the domains are negative 1 to 1 for sine and cosine. And then tangent is all real numbers. Just so we recall that information. So the angle given needs to be within this if they're going to cancel, or the exact value needs to be within this if they're going to cancel. If it's not, they won't necessarily cancel, which means we'll actually have to work it out, which is fine. For this, 3 pi over 4, does that fall within this range? No. It doesn't. So that means these won't cancel. That means our answer is not 3 pi over 4. But we can find this by finding the inside and then the outside. So what is the sine of 3 pi over 4? Root 2 over 2. Now we can answer this. Where in our range is sine equal to root 2 over 2? Pi over 4. So it's not the same angle that we started with, which is why these couldn't cancel. They couldn't cancel because it wasn't in the range. But that answer wouldn't have been our answer if we chose to cancel it. Now, negative 4 pi over 3 is the same thing as, so 4 pi over 3 is in the third. Negative 4 pi over 3 would be where? It wouldn't be in the first. It'd be in the second. Now, if you know that's the same thing as 2 pi over 3, then this works. 2 pi over 3 or negative 4 pi over 3, is that in your range?
Yeah.
Yes. So these could cancel because this is the same thing as 2 pi over 3. And again, you could always go back and evaluate. Cosine of negative 4 pi over 3 would be 1/2, whereas cosine equal to negative 1/2. Negative 1/2 would still be 2 pi over 3. So the evaluating method would still work, even though we cancel them. Is pi in tangents range? No. So let's evaluate. Tangent of pi is 0. Where in tangent's range is tangent equal to 0? Zero.
Isn't 0 not? Oh. 0
is in between negative pi over 2 and pi over 2. So So normally we start at 0 and we go around. For these ranges, start at negative pi over 2 and go up to pi over 2. That's like our starting and end point. Okay. I want you guys to go ahead and try the other 3. If you have questions, I'll be around. Okay, for 10, what is the sine of pi over 6? 1/2. So we're looking for where in the range, in cosine's range, is cosine equal to 1/2. So pi over 3 is our final answer, but we had to find the 1/2 to get to it. What is cosine of 0? 1. Where in tangent's range is tangent equal to 1? Pi over 4. And then, what is tangent at negative pi over 4? Negative 1. So now we're looking in sine's range, where is sine equal to negative 1? Negative pi over 2. Okay, so you're evaluating the inside first and then the outside. Questions on these? Yeah.
For number 12, could you have also said 3 pi over 2?
No,
No.
because 3 pi over 2 is not in your range. Okay. So to get to 3 pi over 2, we have to start at 0 and go all the way around. Now, these are basically the same thing, except now you have the inverse on the inside and the function on the outside. So on the inside, because you're doing that first, you're looking at in that range, where is it? So in sine's range, where is sine equal to 1/2? Pi over 6. Now, once you get here, so whatever angle you find will be within a range at first, and then this could be anything on the unit circle because we're back to the original function. So the cosine of pi over 6 is root 3 over 2. You need to do another one? Okay, choose one. 14. So for 14, we're thinking of the range of tangent and tangent's range, where is tangent equal to negative 1? I didn't hear what you said. So we're looking for an angle.
7 pi over 4.
That wouldn't be in the range. Negative pi over 4 would be in the range. Now we're looking at what is sine of negative pi over 4. Scott?
Isn't it just 1?
I'm sorry, yes. So it would just be pi over 4. So what is the sine of pi over 4? Root 2 over 2. So depending on what is inside will be the opposite of what you get as a final answer. Sorry, that was wrong. It'll be the same type as what you get. So if you start with an exact value, you end with an exact value. I think that was the same for these two. You start with an angle and you end with an angle. So depending on what that is inside, it should tell you what you should end with. Go ahead and do these two. cosine's range is cosine equal to root 2 over 2? Pi over 4. And then what is the tangent of pi over 4? 1. For this one, what is the sine of pi over 4? 5 pi over 4? Sorry.
Root 2 over 2.
I also think this one was messed up. I think these are supposed to be. Nope, just kidding. Where in the range is cosine equal to root 2 over 2? Yeah, that's negative. Because 5 pi over 4 is in the third. So where is cosine equal to negative root 2 over 2? Not negative pi over 4, but 3 pi over 4. Remember, sine and cosine have different ranges. Okay. This last part is a little different because, one, you're given numbers that you don't know. Anytime you see a number that you don't know, assume that we're going back to the triangle where we have to find the missing side and use like our x, r, y definitions. So we need to know a couple things. What is the XR definition for cosine? X over R. What is the XR definition for tangent? Y over X. So that means we need to find Y before we do anything else. Our ranges still apply here. So right now, this is a positive value. Which quadrant is it in? 1. So that means our answer is going to stay in that quadrant. So we need to find y. So we have 64 plus y squared equals 1. Sorry, say it again. 289. I just can't hear it. I feel like this was a Pythagorean triple, but I don't remember. 225. So y is 15. And then because we're looking for the tangent, we need y over r. So tangent is 15 over 6.
Isn't it y over x?
Yes, I don't know why I said that. Sorry. My brain is not working today. 15 is y. So that's still right, but it's 15 over 8. My bad. But yes, that's it. The most complicated part about this is finding the missing piece and determining what angle you're in. So we're combining the inverse stuff with that finding any trig angle portion together. Let's do another one. For 18, our angle, let's do this first. We know this is y over x. What is the x over y definition for sine? Not x. Y over r. So that means we need to find r. Tangent is negative. Which quadrant is it going to be in? 4. Because we're looking at the range. So tangent can only be in the first and fourth, and it's negative in the fourth. So that means when we find sine, is it going to be positive or negative? Negative. So here I can say that negative 12 is our negative because it's in the fourth. Cosine would be positive. Normally in our unit circle in the fourth. So R equals 13 here. So what is sine? Negative 12 over 13. You want to do one more together? Okay. I'm trying to think of one that has not physics. Let's do 19. Cosine is positive, so this is going to be in the first, and this tangent is also going to be in the first. This is x over r. We need y over x, so we need to find y. So we have 2 squared plus y squared equals 3 squared. 4 plus y equals 9. Oops, squared. Y is going to end up being the square root of 5. What's tangent? The square root of 5 over 2. Not complicated, it's just a lot of stuff going on. These last 3, I want you to see if you can do and finish before we leave. If you finish, you can check yourself. We So 4/5, 5/3, and negative 13/12 were your answers to those 3. Next class, if you have questions on those 3, we'll go over them.